Well, people, in the midst of a brutal siege of Gaza that has claimed the lives of over 10,000 innocent Palestinians, 4,000 of whom are children, woke neocon Siti Kasim, who unironically praises Thomas Sowell and wrote a fawning eulogy over Queen Elizabeth, the very same Queen Elizabeth whose government was responsible for atrocities such as the Batangkali massacre, the new villages in Malaysia, which were basically concentration camps, the colonial exploitation of our people. Yeah, basically the same kid, Siti Kasim, who calls herself a human rights defender, right? Who says that all humans are equal, except for Palestinians. Well, this Siti Kasim, our centrist liberal friend, now has a couple of inspiring words for the people of Gaza, as well as Muslims all over the world. Fix your attitude. One day you too can achieve, if only you fix your attitude. Well, as long as you stay alive long enough to fix your attitude, children of Gaza, as long as you survive the incessant shellings and bombings, yes, perhaps you too can fix your attitude and become a model citizen. Now, just to be clear, Siti Kasim did not explicitly mention the people of Gaza, right? But considering her callous attitude towards the Palestinians and constant refusal to put any blame on the Israeli government or Israel or the United States of America, and putting all the blame on Hamas, basically, taking the Western imperialist establishment route, of course, as well as the fact that Siti Kasim has a track record of being quite callous towards the Palestinian plight, right? Yes, it's very, very insidious to be releasing something like this in the middle of one of the worst genocides of our decade. Perhaps the most explicit genocide that is taking place on live TV. Siti Kasim has this obnoxious message, right, to taunt the people of Gaza, basically. Let's get into it. Okay, let's get into it. Okay. Siti Kasim, human rights lawyer, all human, all equal. Yeah, all equal except if you're a Palestinian child getting bombs rain on you. Yeah, then you're somewhat less equal than others, All human beings are equal except that some humans are less equal than others. Okay, let's take a look. Okay. Muslims need to wake up and search their own souls of what they are and how they wish to progress. The world will move forward. All the noise in the world will not make you better. Oh, what an inspiring message, Siti. What an inspiring message for people, in Gaza who are trapped under rubble or who have just lost their children or parents in an airstrike, who are getting bombs rained on them day in, day night for the crime of being Palestinian. Yes, what an inspiring message the Gazans need to hear at this very moment. Yes, let's take a look right now at the article. Okay. Okay, I think it's this one. Right. Remember, though, this is Siti Kasim, so be prepared for shock factor. Okay. Siti Kasim wants Muslims to stop playing victims, for they too were once oppressors during the golden age of Islam. As I've said, this is a very, very, very insidious time to be releasing a statement like this, considering, that Siti Kasim has also taken the pro-Western establishment point of view that, Israel is only defending itself from Hamas. And she has not said a single word condemning Israel's brutal strikes on Gaza, their brutal treatment of Gaza, even though 76% of the British public has called for a ceasefire. I've not heard Siti Kasim calling for a ceasefire. If anything, she's been touting the common neocon Western line, Hamas, 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 right? But look, let's see what she has to say now. Okay. Although she denied being the author of a viral WhatsApp text, the world is both scared and laughing at Muslims. A social activist come human rights lawyer, Siti Kasim nevertheless expressed total and wholehearted agreement with the sentiment of the original author Luai Ahmad. Siti, who has been labeled as a leftist Muslim among her detractors must be blind or willfully ignorant, because I don't know how politically illiterate Malaysian reactionaries are. But just because somebody doesn't like Islam, it does not mean they are left-wing. It certainly does not mean they are leftist, considering Siti Kasim's only inspirations seem to come from right-wing or centrist libertarian Westerners, right? And she explicitly terms herself a liberal, not leftist. And you know what that means, right? We're not talking about a left-winger as in a socialist like Chin Peng, or a left-winger who would basically fight against anti-imperialism. Might I remind you that Siti Kasim also admires Thomas Sowell, the American right-wing Republican, Thomas Sowell. Yes, might I remind you of that? So yes, no leftist in their right mind would be using Thomas Sowell as a role model. But anyway, the only reason they call her leftist is because, well, she gives lip service to LGBT, and she's basically willing to call out Islam, and that's considered very, very brave, very, very inspiring, very, very very admirable among her centrist libertarian followers. I wouldn't even call her and her followers left wing by any stretch of the imagination, right? Because that would be like calling Bernie Sanders left wing. You see, that would be like calling Barack Obama left wing. I think Malaysians are just kind of illiterate when it comes to the political compass, because they don't understand there's a difference between left wing and liberal. But let's just keep it at this, because I don't have much time. All right. Although her views are in sync with many non-Muslims, not this kafir. No, I'm an anti-imperialist and I don't bootlick the West. Ken and I, in my previous video, have already gone through the fact that only a fool would call Siti Kasim left-wing, and only a fool would call Siti Kasim an anti-imperialist or someone who's anti-establishment. Only a fool would think Siti Kasim is anti-establishment just because she doesn't like Islamic establishment. Because Siti Kasim is a loyal servant of the British Empire and a loyal servant of the Western imperialist capitalist establishment. That is the establishment she serves, right? So no, just because you're anti-Muslim doesn't mean you're anti-establishment, because lots of American Republicans who are also pro-establishments are also anti-Muslim, like Ben Shapiro or Thomas Sowell. Doesn't mean anything. Okay, now let's keep going. All right. She concurred that Muslims have to start to self-reflect and abstain from incessantly blaming others for their misery. Ooh, personal responsibility, a very, very PragerU sort of line. Okay. We have for centuries now created a victimhood culture and mentality, and thus we don't progress, she told Focus M. We blame colonialism. We blame racism. We claim the existence of Islamophobia, but we never blame ourselves for our lot in life. Oh, wonderful, 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 madam. Do you want a cookie from Prager University? Do you want a cookie from Fox News? Because that's exactly what you will hear from Fox News, right? Or Prager University, right? Take personal responsibility. Don't blame colonialism, even though, the British Empire has caused widespread suffering and misery all over the world. The empire that she constantly bootlicks has caused such immense suffering and misery around the world, and has stolen trillions of dollars, both in wealth, that is to say, wealth that is extracted from the land, as well as wealth that is extracted by the appropriation of labor through, destroying the global south and causing people to basically fall into destitution, and basically forcing people to work for pittance, in order to build up their empire of blood. Yeah, don't blame colonialism. Don't blame colonialism, even though, you know, it was the British who installed the House of Saud in Saudi Arabia. And it was the British who installed our post-colonial leadership, right? Yeah, but don't blame colonialism for the state of things that are currently underway, you know. And yes, the British installed our post-colonial leadership in Malaysia because they wanted a reliable ally to serve against communism, and one which would always be loyal to British interests. But let's keep going. For context, Loy Ahmed, who is a Swedish citizen of Yemeni descent, has penned a rather sharp criticism of today's Muslims by asking whether there are legitimate reasons for the world to worry about Muslims, which is something that Muslims themselves cannot keep denying. Okay. Right, let's see. It's slow. The world is scared of us. It's time for us to flush the word Islamophobia down the toilet and start looking at the mirror. Right. How come the largest and most thriving terrorist organizations in the world are Muslim? Well, it's an easy question to answer because, you know, it just so happens that the vast majority of the Middle East is Muslim, and there's lots of oil in the Middle East as well, right? And if you bomb a country, sanction it to the ground, and basically occupy it, and basically treat the people like subhuman, well, naturally, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that those people will end up becoming radicalized, right? How come terrorists successfully use Islam to mobilize thousands of Muslims? Well, as far as I'm concerned, the founders of Israel were not Muslim terrorists. They were Jewish terrorists, yeah. And I'm not going to get into the video explaining how they are terrorists. Just read the letter that was written by Albert Einstein in 1948. He explains it all. I'm tired. I'm not going to get into that. You're an adult. Just read it, okay? What is the problem with our leaders, our imams, and our religion? I see the masochistic Muslim who slaps himself on the face for Western approval, eh? I mean, you know, just because there are badly behaved Chinese people, it doesn't mean that I say, oh, do we Chinese people have a cultural problem? Okay. But then again, I understand that religion is not a race, okay? The world has left us behind. Okay, the Kufa, okay. We'll get into this another time, right? Oh, this is the one who was going on about how Hamas is the one that's really oppressing Palestine. Not Israel that's dropping the bombs and that has been occupying the West Bank for 70 years. It's actually Hamas that's the problem. The pick-me Muslim, basically. Right. Taking her views to the next level, Siti Kasim pointed to the very fact that Muslims themselves were also guilty of oppression, as evidenced from the actions of Muslim conquerors during the glory days of the golden age of Islam. Wasn't that tantamount of the Muslims' colonization of others? The Islamic Empire stretched across the Middle East to North Africa and into Spain. It went all the way into India as the Mughal Empire. By the way, Muslims were the biggest slave traders and slavers in the world in recorded history. Well, no one's denying that, you know. Back in those days, it was... you know, everybody kept a slave. I mean, not everyone kept a slave. Those who could afford it. Nobody really wanted to be a slave, but most people didn't mind enslaving others. But here's the difference. Western slavery was very different from Islamic slavery or Chinese slavery or any other slavery before that. Does it mean that the other forms of slavery were acceptable? Of course not, right? But there's a distinct difference in modern age Western slavery that distinguishes it from the slavery of previous generations, in which it is done basically, in which the slavers actually enforced a racial category on the slaves, right? And defined themselves as white, as opposed to the slaves as black or, you know, or any other race, right? So modern American slavery, modern British and American slavery, the slavery of the empire that Siti Kasim admires so much, was different from previous epochs of history in the sense that previous epochs of history, rather, enslaved anyone they could get their hands on, any tribe they could get their hands on. They weren't fussed. But the particular slavery that's practiced by the British and American slavers was that they enforced a racial hierarchy, right? And this racial hierarchy still persists till today, right? I mean, it's not although it's not socially acceptable to own a slave anymore, you can still see remnants of this racial hierarchy, right? In countries like America, right? And you know, right, black people in America, those who are honest with you, will know that, you know, the West, when it claims to be the biggest defender of equality, right, is basically talking a whole load of bollocks, because basically, according to modern Western values, at least, you know, that came about in the post-Enlightenment era, or the Enlightenment era, liberal Western values, all humans are equal, but some humans are more equal than others, right? Just like when, you know, when Thomas Jefferson claims in the Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal. Yeah, he keeps a slave and he has babies with his slave because he doesn't regard all men as equally equal. You see, some people are more equal than others. That is the distinguishing factor between Western slavery and other forms of slavery, right? And in fact, in some cultures, slavery was more like indentured servitude, right? Like in some African cultures, slaves even ate at the same table with their masters and mistresses. Would that be acceptable today? Of course not. But, you know, let's not pretend that you know, the West, you know, Western slavery is somehow any better than that type of slavery, right? Okay, ironically, Siti Kasim observed that has hardly been heard of non-Muslims blaming Muslims as oppressors, that or that they had been victims of Muslim colonialism. Are you fucking kidding me? Have you seen those fucking snowflakes in the West like Douglas Murray or Sam Harris who have Muslim derangement syndrome, who cannot stop talking about Muslims and Islam, but when they say Muslims, they really mean Arab Muslims, because, you know, the funny thing is that they constantly talk about Islam as if it's a cancer and Muslim immigration is cancerous. But in the same breath, these Western heroes that you admire, like Douglas Murray and Sam Harris, they also, for some reason, they claim to care so much about the Uyghur Muslims, you know, despite the fact that any other type of Muslim is repulsive to them, you know. So yeah, no, I don't think the West has been very quiet about Islam. Certainly no. What bubble you are living in, I'm not sure. Do we hear other people continuing to want to wage wars over decades of so-called oppression? Gandhi overthrew the British Empire without violence. He did not go and murder civilians and then come back and claim victimhood. She vented her frustration. Well, you know, if I've been living under military rule, military occupation for 70 years, like I said, and you know, if my house has been routinely destroyed, I've been kicked off my land, and you know, or perhaps I live in Gaza, the biggest open air prison in the world, and you know that my whole life I've only known gunfire and violence and bombs and violence. You know, it would be quite surprising if I didn't turn out to be a terrorist in the end, right? I mean, it's you expect the Palestinians to be like Gandhi after what they've gone through. It's kind of like expecting, I don't know. Sorry if this seems like a tasteless analogy, but imagine you raise a dog, but you mistreat the dog, you kick the dog, you starve the dog. Is it any wonder that the dog turns out violent in the end, right? I mean, there are, you know, human beings are products of the systems in which they are raised, or they are products of their environment and their material conditions. That's the first thing that we recognize as Marxists or socialists, right? Siti Kasim is herself a product of her liberal elite Western circle, right? So these are points of view that are touted by liberal elite, centrist, and right-wing Westerners, right? Like, take personal responsibility. Don't blame others for your misfortunes. It's a very Calvinist right-wing Western sort of view of the world. So as I've said, only a fool would believe Siti Kasim was, by any stretch of the imagination, left-wing. She's certainly not anti-imperialist, that's for sure. Muslims need to wake up and search their own souls for what they are and how they wish to progress. The world will move forward. All the noise in the world will not make you better. If you're not scientifically inclined, put your head down and work at making yourself successful in life, or life will pass you by. Well, that's very nice. That's a very nice final paragraph. But how do you propose to that a child in Gaza is supposed to dream about university when his main priority is survival, right? Right, and you know, Israel is always bombing Gaza, so how can they even build up any universities in the first place, right? But I mean, this is basically something that comes from someone with a position of supreme privilege who has never met anyone from a war-torn country before, basically, to assume, or let's hope she's speaking in good faith, to assume that everyone, you know, just who's angry or upset just has a cultural problem and they need to fix their attitude, fix their cultural problem, like the American right-wingers say. Yeah, I mean, I think the first priority for most people in Gaza right now is survival, right? The culture stuff can wait. But I'm just going to end this video here, and I just want to say that, no, Siti Kasim is a really, really dangerous and toxic element to the left, and I'm very, very appalled by the fact that there are still left-wingers who genuinely believe that she's on the left, right? No. Ken and I, in our previous video, my friend Ken and I have already explained that Siti Kasim is a right-winger, a neocon, right? In a wolf in sheep's clothing, basically, a neocon pretending to be woke, right? And yeah, I will let you decide for yourself. You know, you if you want to keep supporting her, you can, but don't claim to be on the left. Okay, if you're a Siti Kasim supporter and you share her views, you are not left wing. Okay, you are not even remotely left. Thank you very much. Have a good day.